Welcome to the Drum Mechanics Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Green, a fitness professional obsessed with biomechanics and drumming, and today I'm interviewing Travis Orbin. Travis Orbin is of the band The Darkest Hour. He's also independent with many solo projects, incredible music. He's an incredible drummer, musician, and a lifestyle fitness advocate. I'm very excited about this episode because Travis is an ambidextrous drumming machine. He's done incredible stuff with his body to develop his left side, his right side, to have this beautiful symmetrical drum set, allowing him to do anything he wants to do with his body. He's used his bare hand, bare foot technique, which is available on his website for sale, with an array of other lessons to develop his muscular system and body and technique in a way that he can do all the things he wants to do. As he says in the episode, he's not limited by his body in any way, which I think we should all strive for. Travis is a musician. He plays other instruments, and he's constantly practicing and creating incredible music. As I mentioned, Travis is also a fitness advocate. He's someone who's remodeled his physique over a 10-year period of time or longer, from being a rather lean drummer, if you will, to being a very muscular drummer. And near the end of the episode, we dive into, does this muscular physique make a giant difference for him? And I dive in a little bit and talk about a few different things that you can consider if you start exercising, and how you can make your resistance training develop your body, but also develop your drumming. Anyway, I'm very excited about this episode. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. Travis Orbin, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very busy professional, but I'm very excited to talk with you today. How's your day going so far?
Quite swell. How are you, Brandon?
I am good, thank you. We were actually talking before we pressed record, and if anyone is not familiar with Travis Orbin, which it's a shame if you're not, you have to go check out Travis. First of all, fantastic drummer. We're going to be talking about that today, but also in ridiculously incredible physical shape. And we're talking about working out. And you said you have to at least have one meal before you work out, and you want to work out in the afternoon. Is that right?
Correct.
And what are you working out today?
Well, today is a naughty day, so I'm going to probably take off. But I don't have a strict routine, believe it or not. I like to train instinctually. The only thing that is a staple is every 4 days I train my legs.
Okay.
And I just kind of fit everything else around that.
And is that just more of a discipline thing that you know you've got to do it and you kind of just force yourself? Every 4 days I'm going to exercise my legs?
Exactly. I hate it.
Totally get it. Well, tell you what, that actually brings up, my first question for you. I actually want to start off talking about drumming, because the one thing, I've been a fan of yours and watching your content for a long period of time. You've been posting on YouTube, ambidextrous drumming videos, very technically proficient drumming videos from when you were in your, I believe, Virgil Donati, Mike Mangini fan and studying era, and how things have evolved all the way to this point where you're doing really incredible session work. The one thing that is hard to ignore is how you've developed the control of your body, because developing a right foot, right hand, you've got control of all your limbs at a very high level, switching between lead. And we've talked back and forth through Instagram. I've been doing some of your workouts for many months, and it's a lot of work, man. So the big question I want to ask you, with all your discipline, is really everything, is how did you get started practicing all of your bare hand, barefoot techniques and start really developing this right to left work? And the big thing I want to emphasize around this, if I put an umbrella theme, is the discipline around it, because there's the technical side of it, but then there's, as you know, a massive amount of discipline that's required to develop your body to this level over each day and years.
Right. So in the mid 2000s, I basically completely revamped my technique, both hands and feet. I got really into Mike Mangini, his playing, and he was part of this community. It was really a federation, if you will, the world's fastest drummer federation. And they would post these little clips, and he had one in particular where he talked about how he utilized this machine that measures your strokes called the drummometer. Pretty sure they still sell it nowadays, but he would practice barehanded, and he would try to time different subdivisions to not a metronome, but actually within the second. So I think it's like, I don't know, I'm trying to think how many, because every second is basically 60 BPM. So he would try to time, the subdivisions within that. Um, and so I took that concept and I married it with another concept from another drummer who was a part of the WFD. His name's Tiger Bill Meligari. Tiger's not his first name, by the way. Bill Meligari. Um, he really liked flat flams or unison strokes, and he would do them between just the hands or just the feet. So I basically just took Mangini's barehanded approach and applied it with Tiger Bill approach, but within all my limbs. And I first did this uh, very slow, and I never really increased the tempo much. But I was just trying to get through a half hour. That was like my big goal at the time. And I think I even just started with, I think I divided the hands and feet. Like maybe I did a few runs with just the hands and then just the feet, and then I started integrating all of them. And I just kind of built from there. From a half hour to 45 to an hour to 100 minutes. And I would cycle the feet between heel down and heel up. And I would keep the portions balanced. And then I would try to lengthen the heel up portions and stress that more, since that engages both the, soleus, I think that's the muscle name, and the tibialis anterior, rather than isolating them. But obviously, the tibialis anterior is a big part of double bass playing, and you need to give your your midsection a rest at some point. So especially if you're doing like 100 minutes at a time. So I would cycle in the heel down to engage that. But yeah, I feel like I may have missed an answer or two, but that's the evolution of the practice routine.
So that routine, I mean, just for anyone who's, and I think you may have said this, but that is where you're performing unison strokes, where everything is hitting together, flat flams, hands and feet. And you're doing that, I want to emphasize, started off with 30 minutes consecutively and worked up to 100 minutes. Is that right?
That's what I did at the time. Yeah. I don't adhere to that nowadays. I still do the bare hand, barefoot, but 100-minute runs have left me for quite a while. I'll get back into it at some point, but I still do that for about a half hour before I do session work or before I hit the stage when I'm on the road. So it's still a vital component in what I do.
And so with that 100-minute sprint or whatever time you were doing, how many days a week would you do this when you were right into this? Was this a daily thing or was this a once a week thing?
So at the height of my excursion into this, I would say it was between 4 and 5 days a week. And like I said, 100 minutes per session. And that's not allotting for, any sort of warm up time either. Usually I would play the kit and that would be my warm up.
Fair enough. And now, how did you triage the mechanical practice? Because I've done the barefoot hand and I've been working on it. And I'll say I haven't got past 20 minutes. And mostly it's because of my busy life between business and having kids. I literally have my kids watching TV at the end of the night before we do book reading. And I'll be sitting in the kitchen doing it. And then they come over and grab me and it's terrible. But the amount of fatigue that I receive, which is very interesting by doing it, like I experience a high level of fatigue, even if I go slow or I'm pushing or even trying to control. And then I find when I get that high level of fatigue, when I go to the drum set, there's definitely limitations that pop up for me there. Did you experience anything like that you can recall where one would tire out another? And then if you did, how did you work with that?
That's interesting. I'm sure it has different effects on everyone, whether it's pronounced or less pronounced. Um, the only limitation, I guess you could say, that I experienced was that because I used to do it solely as my warm up before I would hit the stage, and then I started doing it uh, alongside pad practice, and that's very important because only with the pads can you, with the sticks and the pads, can you engage your grip muscles, and that was the error that I made early on. I was just doing the bare hand, barefoot, and not engaging the grip muscles. And then when I would hit the stage, invariably get a little sweat going, the sticks start getting a little loosey goosey, and you have to grip harder. And then you start to experience, tension in your grip muscles, and that can, rear its ugly head in a variety of ways.
Yeah. Now, the other question I have with this, and I'm actually, because we've been talking about it. What was what was the objective in your ceiling, right? Because you did the 100 minutes 4 times a week. How are you measuring success? Like, what was it? Like, how did you know if you did it all and you achieved X, Y, and Z result and you're like, I have arrived? What was it that you were aiming for?
Well, interesting. To be quite honest, I didn't have clear-cut goals. I wanted to get faster. I wanted more endurance, more consistency. But part of the impetus to do this was I used to read Mike Mangini's old message board, and this uh, this technique, the really ridiculously long time monotony, that was a proponent of his teaching methods. Whenever you're learning a new pattern or subdivision, he would make his students do this, just insanely long 90-minute. His was 90 minutes. Um, this where you're just endlessly repeating the pattern. You can vary it up. If he would do like 2 subdivisions at a time, or he would change the pattern up. But by and large, it was a very grinding, taxing ethic. Um, and so I learned about that through his rhythm knowledge books, and I saw his students would participate in the message board. And yeah, I think they just talked about how they would do this for, I really can't recall. It seemed like an arbitrary amount of time, like it was a certain amount of months. And I really just wanted to see if I could do this, if I could just, put myself through the grinder and pull the lever and do 4 to 5 days a week for however many months. And I did it. And again, I didn't have any clear cut goals. I didn't have any expectations, but definitely saw a bit of a speed increase. And more than anything, it was my consistency. And that coincided with a period of time when I was just starting to delve into recording a lot, especially at home. So super beneficial in that regard.
Fantastic. I appreciate you sharing this. And I'm just curious with the Mike Mangini thing, because I was a Mike Mangini fan too. I was on the message board, but lacked as much discipline as you. I'll say that obviously. The 90-minute practicing, so he would advocate if someone was learning a new anything, that they would do a very controlled 90-minute focused practice at a slower tempo to try and get this ingrained into their system.
Yeah. It was more, how do I say this? Like he wouldn't, if you were just learning a fill-in, he would have you do a certain amount of repetitions. But if it was a more, I guess, universal, fundamental sort of thing, something applicable throughout any style of music, if you're just practicing, let's say 16th notes around the kit, then he would have you drill it for 90 minutes. And he would come
Fantastic.
up, you could come up with different shapes and stuff, but the overall objective was to fulfill that 90 minutes. And that 90 minutes was based on research that he had done. I'm sure you could speak to this about how the brain stores information and all the neural pathways and whatnot.
There's definitely something with repeating a skill a long amount of time to have it enter into the automatic phase. But it's very interesting to have a drummer, you, Mike Mangini, and several of these people adopt this, because it's not something you hear people talking about. And in fact, I'm sure it wouldn't even be popular if you were to go on to a main education formula. Okay, so we're going to do the bomb blast for 90 minutes at 100 BPM. Go. But there's something to it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, there's a part of this, there's 2 more questions around this that I'm interested in. One, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning discipline. And discipline is it's, as you know, if you want to take any skill to a high level, you can't be just motivated to work on double bass of your hands, right? Because if you're motivated, that'll fail because you'll have a day that you're not motivated and you won't do it. You really have to be committed to it. And I'm sure that you probably had days that you woke up and you felt like exhausted and you're like, you know what, but I got to do this. Do you have any particular practices or any recommendations that you embody as a disciplined individual that someone could benefit from?
Well, at this point, it's hard to tell because I'm so accustomed to just gritting my teeth and getting through something. Um, but really, the bulk of what I do, or maybe I guess you could say it took me doing that to get to the point that I'm at now, because now I'm more often than not, I'm very much anxious and inclined to get into doing something, whether it's practicing drums or bass or vocals or mixing for 4 hours or whatever. But yeah, there was a period of time where, I think one thing that could help is just to kind of envision what all of this dedication and this workman, developing that work like skill, what this can result in. And it can result in the player that you want to be. And I think that, that would probably serve as a unique point of inspiration because it varies per person.
Absolutely. There's something I'm not sure if you have any, if you ever check out any of Andrew Huberman's podcasts, but he's got some really knowledgeable stuff. And he talks about, there's one thing for sure. I know there's some stuff that people disagree with, but one thing called entrainment, which is basically like you set your alarm for 5 a.m. in the morning when you've been getting up at 6, 7 a.m. And then the first few days it's awful. And then on the 5th, 6th, and 7th day, your body starts to create a bit of an internal anticipatory experience knowing that it's coming. And this is where when your alarm set for 5 o'clock, you wake up at 4:59 before your alarm goes off and things like that. I think what you're talking about really is this idea, like if you push yourself to do something, over time it just becomes how you do things, right? How you do one thing is how you do everything. Cheesy soundbite, but you really, this is what inspires me about you that I find so fascinating is that level of discipline and control and skill. I mean, it turned into a remarkable drumming ability, but also you can see it's crossing all the boards because you've got session work, you're learning how to play bass, you're learning how to sing, which is just remarkable.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I tried to sleep in the other day until 4:30, and my body was just like, "No, I can't do it."
Yeah. It's tough too. I'm sure when you're on the road, it's even worse, right? Because if you're touring with Darkest Hour and you're up till 11 or 12, you're probably still up at 5,
Well,
4 or 5.
I don't adhere to that on the road. Yeah, there's a couple of days there where everything's kind of foggy because I got to stay up with everyone else and realign my body clock. But that's the only time I don't do it is when I'm on the road because you know oftentimes you're not playing until 9 or 10 at night anyway, and also with loading in and loading out, and I still work out on the road, so I'm just putting myself through the ringer. So I just let myself asleep as long as I need.
So coming back to your practice, one more question, and then kind of like some just teaching methods, and I want to talk a little bit about fitness as well too. Um, for you, so you had the bare hands, bare foot technique. Of course, when you're talking about practice pad work as well too, there are so many things that you could be practicing. How did you triage what you were practicing before you got into greater musical projects? Like, were there any specific seasons of this is my double stroke season, I'm going to try and catch up with Virgil Donati, I'm going to work on odd times, like things like that? How would someone triage practice pad work if they were kind of following in your footsteps?
Um, I might have a really old practice routine on my phone.
Well, Travis is
Uh,
looking for this. I do remember taking a lesson with you at Justin Buffini's after the intervals, and I remember asking you a question about something, and you whipped out your phone and you had all of these notes, like an endless amount of notes of ideas and practice logs, and that was 2017 or 2016. So I can only imagine how much you got.
that was 2015. Yeah,
That's right. Yes, it was. Right.
I have a really old practice routine on my phone, and so this is looks like this is a 7-day routine, and so I would. This is 2013, so I was not doing 100-minute runs at this point. I was still doing bare hand, barefoot stuff, but not for 100 minutes. But for an example, um, I have bursts on ePad, which means the practice pad company that I endorse is called ePad, and they make pads that are not fun to play. They don't have much more rebound than a pillow. And so I would do bursts, with my hands on with sticks, not bare hand, but I would do burst work on that, probably like 5 strokes, maybe four, maybe uh, 9 strokes, or maybe for a full bar of 4/4. But that was the point of that routine, bursts. And then I have 2 hour double bass, so that's probably sitting on the kit, playing probably a moderate tempo, like 160, 170 for 2 hours. And then I have bomb blasts, 170, 175, 180, 185. That would be bomb blasts at those tempos. And I remember I used to switch. I would try to do unison, but if one hand felt like it was flamming, then I would switch to eighth notes or quarter notes. Um, and I would switch lead hands on the snare or hi hats. And I would probably do those for, I would imagine, 10 minutes at a time. Then we have brass sticks workout. Man, I haven't played those in so long. I have these old brass sticks. This company doesn't even make them anymore. They're called Power Wrist Builders. And each stick is like almost 2 pounds. It's like 1.75 pounds. And so I would do various stickings with those. And then, oh, we have 100-minute runs. So I was still doing 100-minute runs. So that was one day, but I would imagine I would do them in addition, just, truncated. And then 5 weekly hands, which that's one of the lessons that I sell. That is a 5 exercise routine. You play on the snare drum. Feet are incorporated, but it's mostly a snare drum oriented exercise. And it's trying to get you to wait, 5 weekly hands. No, that's hitting harder. I'm conflating the two. And then left side doubles workout. So that would just be doubles at a pretty fast tempo solely with the left side. I don't think I did anything with the right side at all. That was just obviously just striving to get my left side up the par.
That's amazing. That was 1 week.
That's a 7-day routine. And like I said, I would append that with some bare hand stuff, and then obviously some things on the kit, whatever. That was 2013, so I was doing session work at that time. So I imagine that, whatever, whoever had hired me at the time, I'd be rehearsing their stuff in addition to doing all of that.
So with the most of that, first of all, that's remarkable. Like, that's an incredible amount of time, and I wish I had that much time to devote, to be quite honest. Like, I am a disciplined person. I just physically don't have that time. But the question is, most of that sounds like very mechanical work. Like, all of it sounds like body development. I'm trying to get my doubles on the left side stronger. I'm getting my burst clean between 4, 5, 9 strokes. And all of it does not sound like new skills, but rather mastering the skills that you have. Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would push myself in some regard, and then just simply adhering to that routine, you would see increases. But all this really was in the end to serve me as a player, like to be able to better express myself within whatever medium it was. Um, so it wasn't like it was less an athletic pursuit, I guess you could say, and more just having a more well-rounded facility.
For sure. Very interesting, though. Very interesting. It's definitely going to have me rethink about how I'm practicing in the evenings. I practice every night I only get 30 minutes, but it's fascinating. And so now you don't do all that stuff now. Like, did you get to a certain point where your body could do what you wanted to do and your practice went to more musical practice? Or was that your just career changed and you ended up in a much more musical place, and that the technical practice side just had to kind of be sacrificed so you could focus on, I don't want to say money-making endeavors, but money-making and art?
Yeah, I reached a point where between the session work and my solo music, I can I don't find myself lacking in being able to express myself. And if there is some sort of inherent challenge in something that I'm trying to do, then I devote time specifically to that. So my practice is, I guess you could say, more tailored to something in particular rather than just, like I said before, a well-rounded facility, because I developed that already.
Right. Well, I want to say this. Although I'm active on Instagram, I am not an active Instagram consumer, right? I don't really consume a lot of drum content. But whenever you, I'm not exaggerating, post one of your stories on your taped up drum set where you're practicing something for a studio session, you're like, oh, this is kind of hard for me, but it's getting there, in your own words. And you're like practicing, it's like quintuplets to 16th notes to 32nd notes. And then it's back and forth between like, it looks like complicated stuff to me. And I know you got chart music in front of you, but I rewatch that over and over again to try and catch what's going on. When you have something like that for a studio gig, because I know people are hiring you because you can do some of the hard stuff. Let's say you experience something that is hard for you to technically execute. Could you speak to how you go from, okay, I cannot do this the way I want to? What is your step one? And what is your process to bringing it up to these, what seem like really incredible tempos?
Well, I always practice significantly slower than the practice tempo. Um, Depending on the difficulty, I might go as slow as half the performance tempo. And when you practice something, rehearse, whatever, that slow, um, your muscles aren't doing the exact same thing that you're going to be doing at performance tempo, but it's more exaggerated, I guess you could say. But it still makes you like hyper, like acutely aware of really nuanced things, like where your balance is during a fill-in or double bass. Things like when you're playing double bass, like which limb your leg is hitting with, because sometimes it feels more comfortable to if you're playing a unison stroke to play the left foot on the slave pedal and hit it with the snare drum rather than the other way around. So just little things like that. It's entirely beneficial to practice slow and to be able to spot those little nuances. And again, contingent on the difficulty of the piece, I might bump the tempo up as little as 5 beats per minute. And again, it entirely depends on the difficulty of the piece. If I can't play it within one practice session, then chances are I probably need to take it even slower. But usually I can play it within 1 or 2 practice sessions. But yeah, it's just like the bare hand, barefoot. It's a very grinding sort of thing. You take it very slow, and you're very diligent and just aware of the motions that your body is making, and not just kind of mindlessly sight reading the piece. It's such a misnomer that people think I sight read things, because I don't want to sight read anything.
Right. Well, my mistake then. I thought you were. So do you have, when I see the pieces of paper up, are they more just kind of reminders of the song shape?
Yeah. So I don't forget any of the details. I mean, it would take me like 10 times as long to be able to track something if I were just completely to memorize it. And also, all these parts were written deliberately. They were specifically to serve the music that I'm tracking. So to leave anything out would be sacrilegious.
That's fair. Well, this is what I find most interesting about you, and I appreciate you answering the questions and some of these things we've talked about in lessons I've taken with you, and I know you've talked about some of these things before from interviews I've heard. But the reality is, most of the things that you're doing, I mean, you have some unique technical ideas, and I don't want to belittle your practicing at all, but really it is, you do what everyone says they do, but you do it extremely consistently and methodically. You slow things down, you get an incredible amount of control at the slow tempo, and as you're ready, you start to bring it up a few BPM at a time, right? In my little exercise world, we call that micro progression, until you get it to a playing place. And if you can't do it you can't get it to the playing level that you want to, then you devote some more time to it and work on the skill and bring it up.
Yeah, yeah. It's not exciting and glamorous. It's not like a 15-second Instagram clip. There's a lot of work that a lot of people aren't aware of that go into it. But if you do all that grinding stuff, you become capable of such feats.
Well, listen, I'm going to be honest. I Everything you're saying makes 1000% sense to me. I just taught this in an exercise science class I taught right before this to a bunch of trainers across the world, which is cool. But you're still a freak. I watch some YouTube short videos and I see some things you can do, and I'm like, I don't even know what. There's one YouTube short that I think the Drum Technique Academy posted that you did, and it's like maybe a 15-second clip. I think you're on practice pads, and I'm pretty good at deciphering things. I don't know what you're doing. It's crazy, and it's remarkable, and you're so calm, and you're playing with so much control. Like, it's just all kinds of just great, like very, very cool. So as much as I want to know what you're doing in that video, just, congratulations to you, man. I mean, you've really done it, which is remarkable.
Well, thank you kindly. I'll have to look that up because I'm not even sure what you're talking about.
If I could do it on the video, I would post it, but I'll send it to you after, because I watched it a few times and it was one of those things I'm like, I don't even know. Like I watched some Virgil Donati videos and I can slow it down enough and I can figure it out. With this video, no idea. So I'll send it to you.
Wow.
So
I'm really flattered.
the other side of this is I wanted to talk about fitness, because if anyone is familiar with me, I'm an exercise professional who's passionate about drumming. You're a drumming professional who's passionate about exercise. And if anyone has ever seen, and I know you're not this guy, but there's a few pictures of you with your shirt off, and you are in remarkable shape. Like, you're very much from videos of, Travis Orbin videos of playing periphery play-alongs years ago and Sky Eats Airplane, yeah, all that. And then to now, I mean, you've remodeled your body in a totally, like, a really remarkable way. Like, even for my professional world where I work with professional bodybuilders, and you've done a remarkable job. And I'm just wondering, when did fitness become an important thing to you? And outside of consistency and discipline, what's worked for you to help you rechange your body in the last 5, 10 years?
Well, not to get too psychological, but it probably can't be underestimated how much growing up in the 80s had an impact on me, because all the ridiculous action movies and cartoons that I consumed and all the toys that I played with, that had to have some kind of, has to add some sort of psychological underpinning to why I started it in the first place. Because there's just like any male figure around that time was just like superhero jacked. But it's not why I do it now, but speaks to how probably why I started. But I think the thing that really made the rubber hit the road was when I became a fan of Henry Rollins, who is a proponent of a drug-free lifestyle and has always stressed the importance of working out, weightlifting in particular. And so I started in, I think it was late high school. I got um, just a couple of dumbbells and I think a flat bench. But I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have an instructor. Information was, very uh, small and tenuous, and the internet was nowhere near ubiquitous as it is now. So I didn't really know what I was doing, and when I graduated high school, I was just consumed in drums. It was just drums, 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 and playing with my first original bands. And so that, working out kind of took a backseat, and I just sort of flirted with it without any real consistency throughout my 20s. And then in my late 20s, I became very much reconciled with the idea of buying a pair of 50-pound dumbbells. So it was like my all-consuming goal, because I had 40s and I didn't know where the hell to get 50s. I couldn't get them at Walmart, and I couldn't find them online. And then I just, like, for whatever reason, I was like, hey, go to Amazon. And then there they were on Amazon. This was like 2011 or 2012. And I took advantage of the free shipping. And basically that was the impetus to start building my own little home gym. And so now I have, an array of dumbbells and an Olympic barbell, have a nice squat rack. And, and from there I had more, the internet was the internet, and it's had become what it is now, and had more access to information. Even though it's kind of ironic, I still go to the same website, which is this thing that looks like it was built in the late 90s. I think it was, but it's called exrx.net. And
Okay.
they've like never updated it. It's just like these GIFs that look like a potato made them or something. It's really like hardcore information. It's great stuff, but if you're looking for like a men's fitness kind of website, it's not that. But anyway, yeah, I started delving more into like proper research and routine stuff. And I back then I did start adhering to a routine, but then eventually broke off and started just training instinctually, like I do, because I have this list of exercises in my head, stuff that works for me. So I know I forgot to respond to a couple of questions there. What were some things that I missed?
Well, the thing that I am most interested in really is, I mean, again, that's all fantastic. I mean, I think a lot of people that have early 80s, late 80s, 90s, like in this workout story. But I mean, you've stuck to it, right? Like you haven't just worked out a bit. Like this is the thing. I know lots of guys who go on tour when I've gone to backstage things, and I see guys with weights in back there, and they're hucking their weight around, and they're doing their thing, and they're talking, they're having a beer at the same time. You really, you know what I'm talking about, especially with some of the Mayhem Fest. Anyway, you've really gotten a lot more muscular, and that doesn't just happen overnight by accident.
Yeah, I don't know, just the discipline, it's a muscle as well. It needs to be worked. It needs to be developed. It needs to be refined. And if I have the time to do a workout, I'm going to do it. Like I can't talk myself out of it at this point.
Nice.
And that goes with anything else, but especially working out, because that's, like you said, it's a passion of mine. It's not like, I don't know, my life's calling or whatever. It's not my source of employment, but yeah, I went through different routines, and then and I was still like a little bit inconsistent. I might take a week or two off, which is not a bad thing to do, but it was, more often back then. But yeah, I don't know. At some point, it became this thing where I just do every day. Like it's easier for me to do it every day. It's not like I'm doing full body workouts every day, but it's easier for me to get in there and train something and then make that a part of my day, rather than just like go crazy for 3 or 4 days and then take 3 or 4 days off. If I take one day off, it's easier for me to take a second day off, and then before I know it, I've taken a week off. So I don't know. There it is.
Now, that's great. Now, are you predominantly doing like weight training, resistance training, or do you also have a schedule or plan of like anaerobic exercise that you do?
Nope, I don't do any cardio. I should probably fix that, but I never have. I just consider drumming to be my cardio, and yeah, it's always been just lifting weights.
Do you have anything that tracks like heart rate metrics when you're playing drums?
No, I don't.
You know what?
That's always been interesting to me, though.
I would encourage you. I mean, it's definitely an investment, but getting one of these devices that tracks calories. I mean, it's a little bit of a not a good heuristic to have with like the Apple Watches and Fitbits, but you can at least check your heart rate from resting heart rate to when you're challenging yourself. Dr. Nadia Azar, who's a professor of biomechanics at one of the universities up here, tracked Art Cruz of Lamb of God and found that he burned, I think, 1,000 calories in a 60-minute show, and each song was the equivalent of him doing like a 3-minute VO2 max run, which is basically like doing a 1,600-meter run consistently. So his heart rate would blast up to 70, 80 BPM, percent of his max, and then would drop down and then go back up. And that I think he actually has to even have glucose tablets in the middle of his performance. These need to replenish to some degree because it's just so much. Anyway, I think for you with the Darkest Hour stuff, I mean, I've seen you play, and you're playing those meat cleaver Ralph Humphrey drum, or no, is it Ralph Humphrey? Is that who it is? The drumsticks?
Orbin.
That's right. You're playing those meat cleavers. I mean, I would be very interested to see what your metrics are.
Yeah, that is. You have to link me to some gear because I'm interested in that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be honest. The Apple Watch is the easiest if you have an iPhone, and then there are some Fitbit ones that are less expensive and they're 80% correct, but it's still enough to get going for sure.
But I don't like to wear anything on my wrists, so
I will do some research.
sounds good.
That's fair. So now this is a side question because obviously this is something that I talk about. And by the way, I'm just going to throw this out there to you and anyone. If you're not doing cardiovascular training and your metrics are not there, please do heart rate training. A lot of research showing that it's a very important thing to do. Biased. But I want to ask you, I think we've talked about this through Instagram. I think I know your answer, but I want to talk about this. How does your fitness, muscular development influence your drumming, or does it?
Yeah, this is definitely a question I've gotten a lot. My stock line is it has allowed me to hit a little harder, a little easier.
Yep.
So that's it. Other than that, I have not experienced any sort of limitations or enhancements. Yeah, I can just hit a little harder, a little more easily.
It's interesting because I've had this conversation a lot too, and I've seen Matt Garska, who's made a really big physical transformation, talk about it, and a few other people like yourself. And I think the thing that most drummers need to consider is that when you're thinking about resistance exercise and developing your body, is it similar to that of like rock climbing? Right? If you want to become a proficient rock climber, there are specific muscles that you have to develop to a very high level to be able to do that while keeping your weight down. For drumming, if you want to really get the performance benefits of exercise, right? Like doing squats and deadlifts and bench presses will never make you really a faster drummer outside of some of the grip stuff from the deadlifts because you're doing all these other gigantic muscles. But it's very interesting because they see you, like, I mean, literally they see you and they go, oh, this must make you that much more powerful of a drummer. And in reality, it's just some of the small adaptations that transfer rather than the largest ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can't even add anything to what you said. I'm just
well.
Yeah.
This brings up another idea because there's another incredible movement. I'm excited about this, and I want to ask your opinion. There's so much research now on like the pre-medical side of things in health education, like not just responding to like letting your body and your health go to such a state that you require health care, but being proactive to be healthy, eat well. I don't know Henry Rollins well, but I do. I mean, if he's got advocating for a healthy lifestyle, it kind of goes that way. When you're talking about exercising, and I know you must eat well too to maintain a lean physique, do you advocate that young drummers start to do some of like take care of their bodies? And if so, what are the kind of cornerstone piece of advice that you'd recommend for a young drummer?
Well, I don't know. I don't consider myself like a role model. I mean, I suppose I carry myself in such a way, but I don't. It's not often that people ask me for that sort of advice. At least not from an advice standpoint. They just want to know, like they ask sort of off the cuff questions, like like what you asked, like you get that big, does it do anything to your drumming?
Yeah.
Does it inhibit you, or how'd you get that big, or just like kind of dumbly curious questions. But I mean, I am a proponent of exercise, but I don't know. I just guess I don't feel like I have the platform to make such a bold statement.
That's fair.
And it's also, it's just something that I do. I don't. It's not like where it's your lifestyle, and I mean, it sort of is my lifestyle. I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know. I just if someone would like advice in that arena, then I would give it to them. But I don't feel it's incumbent upon me to to say, hey, you need to start working out.
That's
Even
great.
though you probably should. Everyone needs to, whether it's lifting weights or going for a really long walk or whatever, it's we have to do that or the body's just going to fall apart.
I think the very interesting thing, and this happens with any platform, any level of success, and I would say that you have for sure. You may not think of it, but you certainly are a role model for health and fitness for sure. And this is what's really, really great passively, is just by doing the things that you do, you have really developed an incredible drumming ability. And on top of that, also developed really incredible, what seems like health and wellness via your physique. And, in my opinion, I think you do have some great stuff to share. But nonetheless, I think it's just wonderful that you're just doing the things that you do. And whenever I talk to anybody about Travis Orbin and say, you got to check him out, you got to get the barefoot, bare hand technique, which I tell everybody they do. And people at the introduction will hear me talk about this. And they go, oh, yeah, and he's jacked. And I think that's such a cool thing because it's not like you're not like the bodybuilding freak level, but you're also in such an incredible shape that people can't not recognize it. And it gets people thinking what they can do for themselves. And I hope that maybe little things like that, what you do just by being who you are, it gives people the impetus to at least challenge themselves and get started. Because most people, I think, start with fitness not because they want to be proactively healthy or look like Travis Orbin. Perhaps they start because of some level, I hate to say this, most people start with some level of insecurity initially, and then it turns into something much bigger and potentially longevity based, which is very cool.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what happened to me. And I guess you could look at like when I first started lifting and I started seeing significant progress, I would like post pictures of myself, but I never do that now. I mean, if it's a picture with my shirt off, I'm probably on stage. So I guess the adage lead by example comes to mind. So um, I would rather just do that than just be like getting everyone's face like you need to lift weights.
Well, listen, I got to be honest. The TikTok era has made the quote unquote shirt off picture a very different thing than it was 10 years ago. Because a few years ago, it was like, oh, yeah, look, I made some great progress. And people were like, oh, you look great. But now it's like, it's a whole different thing. So I completely understand.
Cool.
Well, listen, Travis, I appreciate how busy you are. I know you're in the middle of doing some editing and stuff like that. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. Lots of great information in here. I just want to, I've said this to you in writing and we've done lessons, but I really, really, there are many drummers doing incredible things. Most of the time when I'm doing my practice on the drum set, I often think about your level of discipline and commitment because I can see, even in YouTube videos, progress over 10 years. While you look at other people like the Manginis and Donatis, you only saw the top level. For you, you saw the development even though you were at an amazing level 10 years ago. And I think about your practice methods and everything you've taught me all the time. And I hope people can extrapolate from this some simple concepts they can apply to their practice. So just thank you so much.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on here and having this talk. I hope there was some information that was of use. I feel like I stumbled over myself a bunch, but yeah, thanks again.
No, thank you so much. And really appreciate you, man. And I'll talk to you real soon.
All right. See you, everyone.